Managing expectations is one of life's skills that I wish I had learned much earlier in life. It would have saved so many childhood disappointments on Christmas opening gifts. Year after year, I thought that that was the year that mom and dad would spend their fortune to buy me the gift that would change my life and please me, whether it was the big Lego set or it was the new softball bat or whatever it was from year to year. My expectations were this was the year, and every year I was disappointed, to say the least, when I didn't get what I thought I deserved or what I thought I would get that year. And I think God's people probably, generation after generation after generation, needed to learn as well to manage their expectations. I think of the people in the Old Testament in Isaiah's time when foreign nations were pressing against the country and the land of God's people, when you could look around the city of Jerusalem, God's city, where the temple stood, where God interacted with his people, and you could look at the palace and see corruption in the political leadership, when you could look at the temple amongst the priests and see that they were taking bribes and kickbacks to do what people wanted them to do. They could be bought too. The prophets of God who spoke to the priests and to the rulers in terms that were pleasing to their own ears simply because they were getting paid to bring this pleasing message to them. Corruption through and through, not to mention the open idolatry that was pervasive throughout the land. And I wonder what their expectations were when a prophet like Isaiah would come along and say that God is coming with divine retribution. He is coming to save you. What were they thinking? And then when an angel of the Lord went through the camp of the Assyrians who had surrounded Jerusalem and threatened them, and when all hope was lost until that angel overnight killed 186,000 Assyrian soldiers. And Sennacherib and his army had to withdraw and pull back to Assyria. I wonder if they thought that was the fulfillment that God had promised. Because if they did, their expectations were too small. I wonder what God's people thought in the day of John the Baptist. When John came along, a wild man who lived in the wilderness and wore a prophet's clothing, which was meager, to say the least, who ate meager food and prophesied about the one who would come after him, the Lamb who would take the sin of the world away. He was one who was unique amongst all prophets, Jesus himself said. He was the greatest. Prophets of old multiple times had prophesied that he was coming as preparation for the Messiah. I wonder what people's expectations were of the forerunner, of the Elijah who was to come that Malachi spoke of. Did John meet their expectations? I know that John's expectations weren't met. He was a faithful prophet. In another day of corruption rampant in God's people through and through, when Rome became the enemy, the foreign invader that pressed down and threatened the existence of God's people, John was a faithful prophet who pointed people to the Lamb right there who would take the sin of the world away. And for it all, he got thrown in prison. It didn't meet his expectations, quite obviously, because he sent disciples to Jesus and say, are you really the one who was to come, or should we be looking for someone else? God's people throughout time, as God has interacted and intervened for them, have had their expectations smashed and dashed. Brothers and sisters, what are you expecting? When God tells you that he has your back, that nothing can separate you from his love, when he promises to defend you, when he promises to deliver you, what are you expecting? In a time when the church on earth is plagued by false teaching everywhere, some of the most horrendous things being taught from pulpits in what are claimed to be Christian churches. When the world in various ways, in various places, is pressing down on the people of God and threatening its very existence in our day, what are you expecting? Are you expecting that politically America is going to become more conservative and the church will be given free rein and then we'll be able to be more open and less fearful? Are you expecting that those preachers of absolute garbage are suddenly going to see the light and start preaching solid law and gospel again? Because if those are your expectations, far too small. Christ is coming, and we wait, like God's people always have. We wait for divine retribution. We wait for his deliverance. But brothers and sisters, it's not coming politically. It's coming with the trumpet blast of the archangel. When every eye on earth will look in the skies and see him and bend their knee in the dirt and confess him King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And we will be gathered to his side as he melts this sinful, corrupt universe down and rebuilds something far better and more beautiful for you and for me, for the entire company. That's what God's deliverance will look like. May God keep us, his people, ready for that day. May he give us eager hearts that look forward and yearn and pray for that day and nothing less. Amen.